webinar. The topic is a lunch and learn about users and endpoint management best practices. And in this session, you'll see a deep dive into the features and the common use cases here, as well as be able to ask any questions you have about MDM and endpoint management. This deep dive is going to show you the features in action and go over mobile device management so you can apply it to your team. The meeting is going to be recorded and has just started, so all the registrants will receive a link to view it later this week. And we ask that you keep yourselves on mute because there's a sizable audience for today's content. Don't forget, you can submit any questions you have anytime using the Meet Chat function found in the menu panel below. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them at the end of the presentation.
Thank you, Amit. A quick introduction for myself. My name is Patrick Della Peruta. I am the practice lead for Digital Workplace here at Worcester. I am a close to 25-year technology vet. I've spent the last 12 years or so working exclusively in the Google Cloud ecosystem as a Google Cloud admin, Google Workspace admin. I've been with Worcester now for going on 2 years. Happy to be with you today. I hope I see some familiar names from some other webinars I've done. So thanks for joining us again today. Amit.
Thanks, Patrick. Really happy to have you on today's call. My name's Amit. I'm one of the senior account executives here at Worcester. Really excited to dive into this subject and really get to know a bit about the use cases here. Just a reminder that there's a live broadcast, so we do ask that questions stay in the chat, except for those kind of interactive moments that we will have. You can also connect with any of us, Patrick, myself, and the team, and any of our colleagues through our LinkedIns, and that'll be pasted in the chat below as well. Now, in case you didn't already know, this event is being hosted by Worcester. We're a premier Google partner, and our mission is to help organizations really maximize their use of cloud to compete in the modern world. We work side by side with companies to help make good technology decisions and grow their businesses in ways they wouldn't have the ability to do otherwise. This really helps organizations develop cultures of continuous innovation, and it's powered by real-time collaboration. So with that said, let's jump right into things. Patrick?
Excellent.
So thanks again for joining us to discuss MDM and endpoint management. We've had some discussions in the past, and I wanted to kind of go over, have there been any changes or significant changes to the way things work and how it works with Workspace?
Great question, Amit. And yes, we've done. I think I did at least one. I think Pete Hoff might have done one too on device management, et cetera. We can paste the link to those prior on-demand webinars. But no, to your question, no, there hasn't been any significant change in how mobile device management works within Google Workspace. But one of the things that sort of prompted us to think about, hosting another one of these is the recent transition for G Suite free users. This has very much been in, at least within technology mainstream news. Last year, Google announced that it was going to start to transition grandfathered businesses that were using G Suite free over to a paid version of Google Workspace. I think the D-Day of that was actually this week. I don't remember the exact date, maybe the 27th. Where free customers had to start transitioning over to a paid version. Because of that, we've seen an uptick in inquiries about mobile device management, and how to use it, things like that. So we thought it was a good opportunity to sort of reintroduce some of these concepts and sort of talk about that here.
Awesome, that's great, Patrick. Thank you. So, and yes, I've read several articles recently about the transition from G Suite free to Google's new paid Workspace subscriptions. Is there anyone in the audience that's recently made that transition or is making that transition soon? Please feel free to leave a comment in the chat here below.
I'm definitely interested in that. I know personally, I had a friend of the family who was subject to that. I had to help them sort of through that. No comments yet. Interesting. Okay. And based on the polls that we had taken it early on, a lot of you all are already on the Google Workspace platform, which is great to see. For those of you that are thinking about it, hopefully this session today provides some information and helps sort of drive towards a decision for you. But what we saw during that poll is some of you are already using Google Workspace MDM. For those that are on platform and already using Google MDM, I do think that there's some content in here that's going to be relevant for you as well, as we do get into some of the endpoint stuff and things like that. For customers that are on platform with Workspace but using a third-party MDM, not encouraging anybody to start to pull systems out of their environment, but this may shed some light, and to David's point earlier, may help drive some thought on reducing IT spend. One of the things that me and my customers spend a lot of time on is what opportunities do we have, especially in today's economy. What opportunities do we have to reduce IT spend? For example, we're using the Google Meet platform. A lot of customers are paying for Zoom. Do we really need both? Things like that, right? So the same thing applies to MDM. And we start to think about Google's integration now with third-party MDMs and BeyondCorp, which really isn't on tap for today to talk about BeyondCorp. We've done some past webinars on BeyondCorp if you're interested. But if you are using a third party, there's still a way to integrate everything so that you're able to take advantage of some of what Google can do while also taking advantage of what some of those third parties can do. If you are not using any MDM, this is really tailored for you and to give you some thought and give you some experience on why MDM is important and why in today's connected world, controlling the devices that you are allowing to access your company data is more important than. So let's just sort of jump into it. And I wanted to start off with just a couple of basic definitions here, as they tend to get used interchangeably as I have conversations with customers. So these definitions are sort of explicit or how they are used within Google Workspace. Device management is the overall umbrella for managing all of the devices that connect to your environment, whether that is a mobile phone like an iPhone or an endpoint device like a Windows 10 machine. Under that umbrella, you have two tracks, and that's mobile device management, managing or remotely administering those mobile devices, such as iOS and Android devices, and then endpoint management, which is the remote administration and control of the endpoint compute devices that you're using, your users are using. That could be Windows or Mac, although I will say right here that the support for remotely administering Mac is not included within Google Workspace for any customers that are Mac heavy. In their environment, you may be using applications like Jamf or Adigy. Google does not, at least yet, and we hope that they do in the near future, Google does not yet play in that space that Jamf or Adigy plays in. So you're not able to right now, for example, push a Mac OS profile to a Mac device. So I just wanted to set that up front in case anybody was wondering about what Mac capabilities there are. But with that said, let's jump into MDM. Talk about that first. A little bit about why it's important, and this kind of goes without saying, some of these bullet points, right? But it helps keep your data secure, your company data secure. Your connected device, especially in a remote world that we live in, the devices that are accessing your data and protecting those is just as important as protecting the servers that are sitting in the server closet in your office, right? Those are behind locked doors and cages and all that. You need that same methodology and mentality when you're talking about the devices, iPads, iPhones, Androids that are accessing your company data. It's important because it allows you to remotely manage these endpoints and from one admin console, which is the perspective of using Google Workspace. One of the perspectives of Google Workspace that I like is I can do everything from that admin console. New device, MIT buys a new device and tries to register or tries to sign in. It's going to generate an approval to me. He is only able to connect that device after I approve it. So being able to remote those things, control those things and manage everything from one admin console, I find important. Support for BYO and company-owned fleet models, right? So if you are a company that's providing mobile devices to customers, although I'm finding that to be few and far between these days. It's certainly not the days of BES administration and BlackBerries like I used to manage back in the day. But if you are a corporate-owned fleet and providing devices to end users, you have all sorts of capabilities, such as a corporate-owned inventory. You're able to preload your inventory into the admin console via a CSV serial number or IMEI number upload. You are then telling Google what devices you own, and only those devices are able to access your Google Workspace environment and Google Cloud in general, right? These are all gateways into that zero trust model, i.e. Beyond Corp that Google talks about from a security perspective. For BYO devices, you know, I am a BYO user myself. It will allow you, without feeling like Big Brother, it will allow you to provide some security controls over those devices, even though you don't own them yourself. And it also provides, the way that Google does it, because it's agentless, and we'll talk about that in a second, it provides Google, or provides the user, the end user, some comfort in knowing that their personal data cannot be looked at and sort of separated from everything on the corporate side. And then finally, you know, one of the things I find important is device and app approvals. I talked about this a second ago with the example of Emit. You know, I have it set up, or we have it set up here at Worsta. If somebody buys a new device, even though they're an authorized user, you are not able to like automatically connect to your Workspace account on that device until it's approved by an admin. What can you do with MDM? And a little bit repetitive over the last slide, but to double click into it, enforce security policies. I've said that phrase a couple times. What does that actually mean? You can do things like device passcodes, enforcing or ensuring that users have at a very minimum, a 4-digit passcode to unlock their physical device, right? For many of us with modern devices, we're using fingerprint unlock, or we're using face unlock on iOS devices. Some may still use, my wife still uses the pattern unlock, if you remember that, on Androids. So there's many different ways that you can enforce passcodes or some sort of passcode. And on those advanced or sort of non-PIN number features, you can even control what features are used to unlock a device. So for example, if you don't want to allow face recognition on your iOS fleet, you can disable that from actually working. Now that does require the advanced track that we just talked about, but you do have those options. Other things that you could do, feature enablement, disablement, we talked about that, right? If I wanted to, I can disable Siri from working. I can disable Google Assistant from working on devices if I wanted to, things like that. Remotely wipe the device again in those situations where a device is lost, stolen, left in a cab, dropped in a marina, which is a story I can tell you guys if you ever want to hear it. You're able to remotely wipe that device from the admin console, and you have the ability to selectively wipe just your corporate data. So in a case of a termination where maybe the device user was a BYO, they were using their own personal device, they were emergency termination, they quit on the spot, something like that, and you wanted to wipe that device. In general, admins are not looking to destroy anything on your personal device, but they do want to wipe the corporate device, that corporate data that is on that device. And Google's capabilities allow for that, so you can selectively wipe just the corporate data that is installed or active on that device. And then lastly, force install. Sorry, my Google Home devices are going off. Okay. So force install approved and necessary compliant applications. I touched on this a little bit. You can curate your app store for. You can curate your app store for your company, whatever applications it is that you want your users to use, etc.
Very cool. I noticed you moved on to the next slide there, but I just wanted to stop you for a quick question.
Sure.
Jeff and Jeffrey in our chat here asked, can you disable the ability to connect an Apple ID?
We have you can, through advanced management in Google MDM, prevent the use of iCloud services. I don't know if there's a way to prevent the ID from being entered in general. I will double check. That's a good question. So yes, I know you can block some iCloud services, but I don't know if you can disable the feature in general. So I will take a show note here.
Following up with folks post-webinar to answer any unanswered questions as well. Yep. So if you're on here, we'll be reaching out after the webinar with a link for the recording and also a time to chat with you guys about any questions you might have had that come out of this.
Thank you, David. Jeff, your question is noted. I will confirm. I don't believe that is the case, but I will confirm and reach out to you. We have another question. Oh, this is from Jeff again. We can't baseline Macs sometimes because users connecting. I have 3 right now. Okay, cool. All right, so let's talk a little bit about actual mobile device management with Google Workspace and the things that you're going to be encountered with as you start to go down this journey of enabling MDM within Google Workspace. First is the 2 tracks that I mentioned, basic and advanced. Basic is agentless. This allows you to administer your device with limited capabilities. You're able to wipe corporate data. You're able to enforce a passcode, a physical passcode on the device. It's agentless, doesn't require the user to install anything. This is typically what I see organizations use if they are a BYO shop, although you can mix and match and do different things with different sets of users. So that's the basic track. Advanced track gets you all of those advanced setting capabilities that we talked about. Being able to block Siri, being able to block the use of an iCloud account, I believe is the case as well. So those are the basic and advanced tracks. Within Google Workspace, you'll also see reference to a couple of different syncing technologies, and I have them listed out here. iOS Sync, Android Sync, and Google Sync. Pretty self-descriptive. iOS Sync is used for iOS devices and syncing between Google Workspace and iOS. This is just the underlying technology that is used to make that magic happen. Same thing for Android Sync. This is just the underlying technology that makes the connection possible between those 2 endpoints. And then lastly is Google Sync. And if you're new to Google MDM, you'll see reference to this and may have questions on what it is, as it's sort of undescriptive. Google Sync actually refers to, if there's any sort of old school IT admins here, will remember Exchange and remember Active Sync. It's a syncing technology. It's an old Active Sync or Exchange technology called Active Sync. This specific technology within Google Workspace MDM is what controls whether or not your iOS devices are allowed to use the native Mail app, the Apple Mail app, on their iOS devices. Worst's approach to MDM is to never use Apple's native Mail client. I could have a discussion as to why on that, but there's some security concerns around that. So we always encourage the use of the Gmail app for Google Workspace customers, both on iOS and Android. But Google Sync, if you do need to support the Apple Mail client on iOS devices, will need to be enabled in your environment. Lastly is Work Profiles, formerly known as Android for Work. Work Profiles are unique to Android devices, and it's a really cool feature in that for BYO devices, it really distinguishes for the end user the difference between their corporate applications and their personal applications. So for example, I'm a Android for Work or Work Profile user. I have a BYO device here, my Pixel 6. I install my Worst account. What's going to happen is because of my curated app list, it's going to automatically install the applications that Worsta wants us to have. And for things like Gmail, because I have Gmail on my phone already, what will happen in like my app tray is I will have 2 icons for Gmail. One that looks like the normal icon for my personal Gmail account, and I will then now have a second Gmail icon with a slightly different icon. It has a badge of a company building on it, and that's to indicate that it is a company app. So it's very easy for me to distinguish and see that there's a difference between the 2. And as a BYO user, it sort of gives me some comfort that my IT admins are not peering into what I'm doing on the personal side. So it's called Work Profiles. It is, again, unique and exclusive to Android devices. Let's jump into any questions on that. I don't see any other questions here. Okay.
Great. So thank you very much for that information, Patrick.
Sure.
Learned a lot about mobile device management and endpoint management. Now, I know one of my customers was actually just asking me about being able to manage Windows devices. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. And I have some bullet points here on endpoint management, as this is sort of that second piece under that umbrella, right? So device management, you have MDM, you have endpoints. Endpoints referring to your compute devices. And last year, Google is really making strides to catch up and sort of play in the same arena as something like Intune, if we have any Windows administrators here. In that you're able to sort of push policies, push software, prevent things from happening on endpoint devices. Typical IT admin stuff in a Windows environment, at least. The things I used to do before I was a Google guy, pushing out GPO policies, setting screensavers, setting up a company wallpaper on backgrounds, preventing USB drives from being able to read and write data off of a computer. Google has introduced controls starting with Windows 10 OS that will allow you as an admin to control those GPO style policies that you would typically find in like an Active Directory environment. So for example, through register, once you've rolled out enhanced desktop management, IT admins via the admin console can push out GPO policies. Again, things like screensavers, and desktop wallpapers, and mapped network drives and printers and things like that. You can do that all through the admin console. You can also do things like manage BitLocker. So if you are a BitLocker shop and enforcing the use of that encryption technology, all of the controls that you may need from an IT admin perspective, accessible through the Google Admin Console. Requiring encryption, where keys are stored, recovery keys, things like that. You can manage all of that for BitLocker through the admin console. Patch Tuesdays, wonderful Microsoft Windows updates that happen every week. All of that can be managed through the admin console as well. But before I sort of jumped right into sort of that enhanced track, and I do want to make a clear distinction of a couple things. Just a quick time check as we're running up against the clock. By default, Google, within your admin console, will do a couple of different things for endpoint management, right? And I have a couple of bullet points here that are sort of non-descriptive. If you've been on platform, or if you're on platform already, and you go into your devices section of your admin console, you may already see Windows 10 devices and Mac devices that are listed there. There's a couple of reasons why that happens without you as an IT admin like actually doing that, right? You may not know how they showed up there. And Google will do a couple of things by default for you, depending on the situation. First and foremost, if you're in there and you see something labeled as a fundamentally managed device, that means that at some point, one of your Google Workspace users logged into Google Chrome on that device. As soon as a user does that, regardless of whether there's an agent or anything else installed on that machine, as soon as a user logs into your Workspace environment from their machine, that browser session gets registered as a fundamentally owned device in your admin console. You then can use that information to say, hey, I know that Amit has this Mac machine, and here's some basic information on it, like a serial number and the MAC address. You can't do any remote administration from it, but you do have, again, you have that audit log to say, all right, at least I know what devices Amit is using. The second, as you graduate from fundamental, you'll may see reference to Drive for Desktop, or this device is being managed by Drive for Desktop. That one's a little bit more self-explanatory. If you're using the Drive for Desktop client, whether that's on Windows or Mac, once that is installed by an end user, that gives admins a bit more control over that endpoint device, with again, without you having to do anything additional from an admin perspective. So if a user has Drive for Desktop installed, you then get the capability of wiping that corporate data off of that device without you having to do anything else. Now, you don't have all of those other GPO controls that I mentioned, and you can't push out software and things like that, but you are able to prevent or control the device data that that they have synced over. So that is part two of the maturation of endpoint management. And again, you may see reference to these in your admin console already. Lastly here, and I sort of started with this last bullet point, is that enhanced management that we talked about. This is an agent-based. In order to roll this out, you do need to have an agent on the endpoint device. That can be baked into images and things like that if you're using imaging technologies. But that is an agent-based, doesn't need to be installed. And then once you have that installed on the endpoint device, you are able to get that fine granular control over like BitLocker and Windows updates and things like that. So Google's made a lot of great strides in incorporating these really necessary IT functions again into that single pane of glass that is the admin console. So let me stop there and see if there are any questions. We are 50% used 50% Windows and use GCPW. GCPW is a great call out, Jeff. Thank you. And I probably should have had a bullet point here on this. GCPW would be actually a fourth bucket of a way that a machine may show up into your devices, your managed devices list. GCPW, short for Google Credential Provider for Windows, which is a mouthful to say and type. Nope, I can't type it that far. There you go. Google Credential Provider for Windows. I have 6 different customers in the process of rolling this out right now. They are remotely managed devices. They don't have an Active Directory domain. Their users currently on these Windows machines are logging in with a local username and password that is unconnected from any other username and password that they use, and often causes problems for IT admins as users forget passwords, things like that. GCPW really comes in and solves that problem. GCPW will allow you, through an install on that local machine, will allow your end users to log into their Windows machine using their Google Workspace email address and password, which provides this single sign-on sort of look and feel. Very easy. It's one identity that users are using now to access their computer, and then ultimately Google Workspace. Through those enhanced desktop, enhanced management capabilities that I talk about, you are able to then control whether that user is an admin or a standard user, etc. Jeff is saying it's great, but struggling to roll out to our Macs. Yes, there is, again, Macs are a little bit have fallen a little bit behind in terms of what Google is offering in terms of management. Not that I encourage the use of third parties, but if you're looking for a unified login experience on your Mac devices, something like Jamf or Adigy both have proprietary solutions that will connect those systems, Jamf or Adigy, into Google Workspace, and then sort of change your login behavior on your Macs. Not an expert there. I've managed Adigy and Jamf in different environments, but as of right now, Google doesn't have Jamf admin here. It's expensive, but incredibly robust. It is. We use it here. It is very expensive. Google, and we're at time here, so I want to be sensitive to that. I still feel, and Google has all of the infrastructure in place to be able to start inching in towards what Jamf can do, but it remains to be seen whether or not they actually do it. JumpCloud is also another fantastic platform. With that said, let's get through the last couple of slides here. Amit, I think you wanted to talk a little bit about this.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Really great information. Just a little bit about what we are at Worsta and what we do here at Worsta. Kind of kicked off with this at the top of the call. We're a premier Google partner, and our mission is really to help organizations maximize the use of their cloud and compete in today's modern world. So we want to work side by side with you. We help with consultation packages, whether it's a team that's just getting started or an advanced team that wants to do a security audit and kind of maximize the security and lock everything down. We also do offer training and expertise. We've got folks that are trained just like Patrick and by Patrick's team to execute on this, or we can help teach your teams to execute it on themselves. And we want to customize everything for you guys. Everything about Worsta here is really building a partnership with our customers and our end users, right? We want to be there to support you along the way as you grow. We'll help with a multi-phase approach or simplify things down for you and do it step by step, right? And then we can help with third-party integrations and things like that as well. So if there's ever anything you need as far as technology consulting goes, we're happy to be an ear and help along the way and guidance and expertise.
That's right. Yeah. So somebody mentioned JumpCloud, which is a great platform. We have staff with expertise there. Other third-party systems like Okta, Iron Mobile, things like that. So absolutely, good call. Cool. And then just to recap, what we talked about today: overview of Workspace device management. Within that, mobile device management and endpoint management. Endpoint device management for those customers that are already using mobile. If you're not using endpoint yet, it's really robust. And if you're not using anything for endpoint management today, is really a great step forward. If you're using Intune today, maybe start to look at comparisons of the two and see if there's any opportunity for savings. Does it conflict with using GPOs? No. So if you are an Active Directory shop, so we have a question came in here from Jace. It does not have to, right? So you can have, and you may find an OMA setting that does not exist in Google Workspace. So there's a bunch of OMA settings that are native, but you can use both GPO and Google Workspace policies. Does not work with autopilot. That is one of the things that my customers are looking for. So somebody else mentioned like the rolling out GCPW can be a little bit painful on top of existing profiles, at least. There is not an autopilot model yet. This is like the #1 feature request I have had to my my colleagues at Google. So more to come on that. All right. I have one follow-up question here for Jeff. I have your contact information, so you'll get an email from me by the day today, if not by tomorrow morning at the latest. But I do have one question here. I hope everybody got something out of this. Thank you all for joining. Looking forward to seeing you all in the next one.
Patrick, I've seen your schedule. Let's commit to tomorrow.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. A lot of MDM rollouts I got to do.
Yes. Thank you guys for being on here. We will be getting out the recording to you. It'll probably be Monday, will be my guess, is when we finally process the recording and get it out to you guys. Pretty quick turnaround. We'll also be following up with everybody on the call to schedule a little bit of time to hear what you thought about the webinar and answer any questions that you might have. So thanks to Patrick and Amit. Great presentation. Loved it, guys.
Thank you much. Take care.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks all. Bye.